Whether you're totally new to this or an experienced WordPress expert, welcome to this Spearhead theme tutorial. I'm Richard Midson.
And I'm Ed Thomas. We're both WordPress.com happiness engineers, but more importantly, we're also podcasters. My podcast about entertainment and technology, Nearly Coherent, recently published its 200th total and 8th good episode.
And I'm using my former career as a radio news reporter to study the techniques of the big podcasters to see what we as independents can learn from them in my show called Can I Make a Hit Podcast? But the point is, we are both passionate about podcasting. And the great thing about the Spearhead theme is that it's a straightforward, easy way to create a website for your podcast on WordPress.com.
In this video, we're going to go through the process of creating a WordPress.com account, setting up your posts, setting up your podcast settings, and customizing your site. You can watch the entire video straight through or jump to the section that you're interested in and work from there.
One thing you might be wondering, though, is why do you even need this theme or even a website for that matter? Well, a podcast will get people's attention, right? But what do you then do with that attention? Maybe your plan is to get people to buy products from you or join your movement or community. A podcast alone can't do that, but a podcast combined with a website can. With Spearhead, you can turn that attention into action.
Additionally, you want to have a place that works as a home base for your website. Being on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify is important, but if somebody's trying to share your show with their friends and followers, they may not be using the same podcast service that their friends are. So having a place that can be the central location that branches out to links to all of those services is important.
So the first thing we're going to do is get you set up with a WordPress.com account if you haven't got one already. So the first thing you need to do is to go to WordPress.com. Once you get there, just hit that button in the middle of the screen and start your website. It's going to take us through a few simple questions like entering our email address, picking a username and a password. So let me just enter those. So once you've entered your details, then click on Create Your Account. And the next thing we need to do is to think about our site name. Now, the site we're going to call here is going to be Spearhead Podcast Demo. So let's just enter that. Podcast Demo. And what you'll see is it suggests a range of domain names that you can use. Now, you probably want to pick a custom domain which suits your particular podcast and its topic in it. You can see down there, for example, there's spearheadpodcastdemo.fishing. So if you're doing a fishing podcast, you might want to choose that one. But for now, we're quite simply going to choose a nice, simple .blog domain name. Next thing we want to do then is to set up a paid plan. Now, a paid plan will allow us to put podcast audio onto our site and also allow us to add a custom domain that we just selected there to our site as well. So I'm going to click Start with Personal. And the final bit we've got to do then is just to complete our payment information, enter all your details into the system. And once all those details are entered, you can click Continue. Click the payment method that you're using there. And that's going to set up our site, and we can then start getting on with installing the Spearhead theme. One notice you are going to see as you get near to the end is an offer to work directly with a WordPress happiness engineer. For the moment, we're going to do it for ourselves. So we're just going to click this button. And here we are in the dashboard of your site. If you're a WordPress.com user already, you'll be familiar with this. But if you're brand new to it, let's have a look around. The first thing we need to do is to start installing our theme. So we're going to go to the design section because obviously we want to design the look of our site. And you can see we've got two options here, and the one we want is going to be themes. All WordPress.com sites or WordPress sites have a theme installed by default, but the one we want to use here is Spearhead, and you can see it's appearing right at the top there. Now, if you don't see it, you can scroll down a little bit, click on the Show All Themes button, and then enter the word Spearhead, and it will show you the theme come up like that. Select the theme. It'll come up with an instruction page that you can see on the left-hand side. All the details about how to set it up, but we're going to show you that today, and also a demo side as well. But the main thing we want to do right now is activate this design. You have a couple of options here, but we're going to stick with the default. So we're going to use Spearhead without changing my homepage content. So the last thing we need to do is to activate Spearhead. So if we go back to our main dashboard now, we can see that Spearhead's installed and we can start working on our posts and adding our podcast episodes.
So the next thing we're going to do is publish an episode of your podcast. To do that, we're going to click the Add New Post button again and wait for the editor to come up. So we're going to give the post a title. Now the next thing we want to do is add the audio for our episode. To do that, we'll click this button here, and then it's going to show us the different types of blocks that we can add. You'll want to start typing in audio in the search bar at the top, and that'll bring in the audio block. From here, you can click on Upload to upload new media to your site, Media Library, or Insert from URL if you're going to insert the audio from a third-party host. I've already uploaded some content, so we're going to go to the Media Library, and we'll choose Episode 1. Now you want to add some content for the post so that it gives a little bit of context for what you're going to do. I'm going to copy in some content that we've already written and paste it right in. So the next thing you're going to want to do is go to this Post tab of the sidebar. And you're going to see a couple of different options in these tabs here. The first thing we want to do is go to Categories. Categories are a way of grouping posts together. You can have posts that are grouped in, say, a news category, if that's what your show is about. And if you wanted to have a subcategory of technology, you could do that as well. It's just an easy way to help categorize your content so that people can find what they're interested in more quickly. We already have the podcast category set up, so we're going to select that. Next are tags. Tags are similar to categories, except that they're a flat structure. So this would be if you had something in the categories of news and technology and you were talking about WordPress, you could then use WordPress as a tag to target it about that. But we're going to add a couple of tags now. So if you already have a tag on your site, you start typing it, it'll come up and you can select it. If you are going to add a new tag, you can just start typing it and then hit comma to add it as a new tag. Finally, you'll want to set a featured image. A featured image is going to be the art that is shown on the front of your site and also for the episode on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, Spotify, all those sorts of places. So you're going to click Select Image, and there's going to be a couple of options here, but we're going to choose Media Library because I've already uploaded some. And we're going to choose this image as the episode cover. Okay, and now we have the featured image set. We have categories, so we're ready to publish. So we're going to click on the Publish button. Publish again. And then when we refresh the site, we'll see that the art is here, the actual episode audio is here, and the information about the episode is all shown beneath that. Now, another thing to know about are block patterns. These are things that are set up to make different sorts of layouts easier to build. So the Spearhead theme comes with a couple. To get to them, you're going to click on this blue plus sign up at the top for Add Block and go to Patterns. So now you have a number of different patterns. What we're going to use is the podcast links pattern, and that's going to add recommended links for where people can subscribe to your shows. To edit that, we click on one of the links here, and then we click on this icon that looks like a chain. Then you can edit it to be whatever you want it to be there. And you do that for each of these. If you don't want one to be there, just delete it. So once you've edited the links, you're going to want to save this as a reusable block. So what we'll do is click this outline up here, and this will show you all the information that's in this block and the parent block. So we choose the navigation block. Click on More Options and click on Add to Reusable Blocks. So once you've set all these links, you can save this as a reusable block. And then that will be available again when you do a search for reusable, you'll see the subscribe links. Click it, and it'll add that again for you. We don't need that for right now, so we're just going to hit update. You can now see at the bottom of the episode, we have the links for people to subscribe to your podcast.
And what you can do now is to keep using that same process to create all your different episodes. Hopefully you'll have many, many of them. But one thing we have got to do is get those episodes onto podcast apps. And to do that, we need to set up your podcast settings in your account. So we need to head to Manage on the left-hand side. Scroll down there a bit, and we need Settings, like so. And then at the top, we're picking Writing. Scroll down a little bit on this one. You will get very used to this once you're setting up your podcast, and you'll see this section here called Podcasting, and we want to click on the Setup button. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to tell it which category our podcast episodes are in. And as you saw Ed just do there, he selected the podcast category to define when he was creating a post that was an episode for the show. So we need to tell the feed that we're going to be using that podcast category by clicking on it. As you see, the moment that we click that, we get all the other options appearing. I'll come back to this bit in a little moment, the RSS feed, but what we need to do now is provide all the details about our show as a whole. So not just individual episodes, but the entire show. So the first thing we're going to do is add a show image. So we will use some of Ed's created art on that one. Let's just add that in. Like so. We're also going to add a title for the show, which we've already decided is podcasting. The next one we want is a subtitle for our show. So this is just a very short description of what your show is about. So how to achieve online success using podcasts and websites. Next thing we want to talk about is categories. Now, these are not categories within WordPress. They're categories that are going to see what your podcast is defined under in podcast apps. And so, for example, here, we're doing a podcast about podcasts and about websites. So what might that be about? Well, it might be about business marketing. So we're going to look down through the categories there and pick marketing. The next one, it might be about education, for example, and how-tos. So we're going to pick that category. And what about technology as well? Because we're talking about websites, and we can pick that one there. But you want to pick a category which is relevant to the topic that you're covering. And you may also want to think about it from the point of view of being discovered as well. It might be a case that instead of going, I'm just making a business podcast, you might get more luck in something like the education section if people are going to be, if there's going to be less competition for podcasts in that area. Explicit content, it's pretty obvious what that's about. If you want to be saying something that may not be appropriate for some people, you want to be marking that clearly, or you might find yourself being banned. The host, artist and producer, we'll enter those quickly. And then you want to be putting in a summary. And this is just a bit more detail about what your show is about. And remember that people, before they click play on your show, are going to want to get some idea about why they should bother clicking play. So this is your opportunity to give them a bit of a sales pitch and explain what your show is all about. So we'll be showing you how to use a podcast combined with a website to grow your business, etc., etc. You need to enter an email address for a lot of feeds out there. So we will do that now. And finally, you might want to put in a copyright notice there just to let people know that this content belongs to you. Finally, we save the settings. And once that's done now is set up your entire show series, your entire show's identity. But what you need to do now is to share this link. This is your RSS feed. And this creates a small text file that has all the details about your episodes and about your shows and about your artwork and your description. And then you share that link with podcast platforms. They can read that little text file and they draw in all the information, all the audio files and everything like that they need to show to people using those apps all the details about your podcast so that they can click subscribe and listen to it. So for example, if you go to iTunes Connect for Apple, you would provide this link. You can click copy. You can see it's copied there. And then go, for example, to Apple and iTunes Connect. You can log in with your normal login details on there or create an account if you haven't got one already. And we're going to Podcast Connect. And that's going to give us an option straight away of being able to enter our RSS feed, so that URL. So we're going to copy and paste that in. Once that's in there, we click on Validate. And as you can see there, it's come up with all our details, and we can now submit that to Apple, and they will then consider it, make sure they're happy with it, and then let you know when it's on the Apple directory.
So finally, we're going to do some customization to the way that our site looks. To do that, we're going to go to the Design tab and hit Customize. So in the Customizer, the first thing we're going to do is change our site identity. This is going to be the information that is shown in the header here. So the first thing we'll want to do is add a logo. If you click the Select Logo option here, it'll bring up your media library. You can also upload a new logo if you need to, but we already have one loaded, so we're going to just select that from our media library. Click Select, and then it'll give you the option to crop the image. That'll then be shown at the top. Next, we'll want to change the site title to be something less generic than site title. So we're going to use podcasting. And then we can create a tagline as well, which will then be shown beneath the site title. Finally, you want to add a site icon. The site icon will be shown where that WordPress logo is in the browser at the top. So click Select Site Icon. We're going to use the same icon as the logo. Hit Crop Image. And then whenever somebody visits your site, it'll look like that in the top tab. Next, we're going to change the excerpt settings. Excerpts are small, brief descriptions of what your content of a episode or a post is. You can set them manually through the excerpt panel of a post, or you can just have it auto-generate. So right now it's set to show on the homepage a summary. So it auto-generates the first bit of text from our episode, but we can also click Show Full Text, which will then give the full formatted layout on the front page. Finally, we're going to want to set up our menus. Now, the site comes with two menus already set. We're going to want to choose the primary menu, which is the top menu here. It has the home page and a contact page that was already added for you. So we're going to click on Add Items to add new items to the navigation. Now you're going to see that you have a whole bunch of options here. We're going to want to choose Pages, and we're going to add the About page. So if you click on that gray plus next to the name, it'll then be added to the menu, and you can adjust where that's shown by clicking and dragging so that it moves around in the menu. Or you can click this reorder link, and then there's some arrows where you can just click up, or if you want to make it nested underneath another item, you can click that arrow. Then it'll be shown as a drop-down, but we want that to be a top-level item. So now it shows the Home, About, and Contact at the top. Next, you'll want to set up your social menu. This is going to be where you add links to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. These are all custom links, so if you want to add a new one, you click Add Items and go to Custom Links. But we have a bunch already set. So if you change the URL, it'll go to your profile, and then you can choose the menu location as the Social Links navigation. That'll then be shown directly beneath your main navigation. Now there's one more menu area on this site, and that's at the footer. If we go to View All Locations, you can set this up to be the links to your site on different podcast services. You can have your social links shown again as text, or you can choose your primary menu just so that it's easier for people to get around once they get to the bottom of your site. Once you've made all those changes, you want to click the Save Changes button. And then those will publish. And then they will be live on your site. Now, one other cool thing about Spearhead is that it also has a dark mode, because people go to podcast sites oftentimes on their mobile devices. If they have their phone set to dark mode, that is actually shown to the browser settings, and those can be then used by a theme. So when you have dark mode on, the colors will change and everything will still look great without any extra involvement from you.
Of course, there's so much more you can do with a WordPress.com website after this. You can sell products to your podcast listeners or just build an email list, whatever it is you want to do. Also, if you're new to podcasting, then you might want to consider our Podcasting for Beginners course. It's an in-depth course that covers everything from finding your niche to editing. And I'm one of the tutors on that, and I also share quite a few of the secrets I learned as a news editor and radio journalist for 10 years before I did this job now. If that sounds of interest, then check out this website, wpcourses.com.
Well, we hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you have any questions at all, then feel free to click the blue question mark at the bottom right-hand corner of the WordPress.com dashboard, and you'll be connected with a happiness engineer who will be more than happy to help you get your site set up. Thanks for joining us.
Goodbye.